Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Good morning. 6:08 it is, and I am Randy Tobler in a fog. No, well, not personally, but driving over here. Stephanie Bell, did you make it okay? The fog is thicker than butter. You can't slice it.
It's super bad. It was bad, what was it, last night, I think? And I know the planes... the planes from Columbia didn't... I saw a Facebook friend said, we flew here from Dallas, we tried to land, and we turned around and went back to Dallas because the fog is so bad.
Yeah, my daughter was supposed to come in yesterday and didn't get in until like 1:30 or something. I don't know. It's crazy.
And it's patchy. Like,
yes.
You know, it's really bad, and then it's fine, and then it's really bad. Producer
Hannah, how are things in California?
Also very foggy.
John in Jefferson City?
Yep, fog.
And I mean, I don't know why, but I used to live up in Northeast Missouri for 10, 15 years, and I was always worried about an Amish cart over the hill, you know, that you can't see. So I have this going through my mind as I'm driving down the road. It's like, oh my gosh, what's up in front of me like 10 feet that I can't see? It's a little different here in this area, but
now you're scared of other over-the-hill things.
I think Producer Hannah just called you old.
Producer Hannah. You know what I say to that? It's better to be over the hill than under it.
There you go.
Beats the heck out of the alternative.
There's Brian Hauswirth. Brian, you made it in the fog?
Yeah, I'll tell you. And
it's all over.
It is. It's worse to our south.
Really?
Yes. And we have just had a brutal month in terms of weather. Don Luzader is going to send us a voicer here shortly, but Springfield Branson Airport is closed. They've had a wreck on I-4, a couple wrecks on I-44.
Oh, my.
All this involves fog. Springfield National Airport is closed until 10 o'clock this morning. But Randy, to your point about the buggies and everything like that, yeah, you're right. You have to always be on the lookout. And I started seeing come in last night. And Jessica Hafner at 5 o'clock actually showed on Channel 17, our news partner, the Columbia Regional Airport. You couldn't even see. I had no idea what it was. It was the airport. So just be careful out there. And we did have a buggy incident where a buggy was hit by a vehicle in Moberly back in 2010. And it was horrific. But that was during pretty good weather. So it can happen at any time. And that was a guy that was texting while driving.
And look, we've got a lot of homeless people on the shoulders of the roads.
Yes,
and
we do.
I'm just really frightened that something awful is going to happen. So be very, very careful.
Well, and 2 nights ago, I was on the phone, and I remember saying, I think this is my exit, but I can't see the overpass. So in Ashland, I was already exiting, and I could not see the overpass right there. I mean, I could barely see the Taco Bell and the signage.
Wow.
But other than that, I mean, and I don't know how far that is. I'm not, but it was
very close.
Thick
We're
fog.
we're getting reports from the Osage Beach Police who confirm that a pedestrian was apparently hit and killed by a car on the Grand Glazed Bridge yesterday, and the fog may have played a role there.
Yeah, God, that's awful. That is just terrible. And again, be careful. We have had if you think about January, this month, this I have to put in there with it. We still got several days. We've had a major ice storm. There was a winter weather advisory. I don't know how in the world that didn't get to winter weather warning, because if that wasn't a warning, I don't know what was. We've had multiple snowstorms. We've had wind chill warnings. It's been a brutal, and then this fog today. It's been a brutal month.
As all the parents don't need a reminder since the kids have only been in school like 5 days.
Yeah, and the good news is the rest of this week is warm up a little bit, but we're still having issues. But no, you're right. A lot of schools, and there are some schools that have literally not been in hardly at all.
The kids have gotten in about
Missouri.
as much work as the legislature this year, as the Senate.
They were all there yesterday, smiling and waving for the camera.
And we are going to be talking to Governor Parson at 8:09, 8:10, somewhere in that realm. So you'll want to set your clocks for that. And speaking of fog, it makes me think of education, because my wife asked me yesterday, as we're, swimming our way through the fog, getting from the office back home, what causes fog? How does this happen? And I said, well, because I had a good education when public school taught things like this, I think I understand it. But let me try this out on you. It's because, I hope Tony Lupo's listening and he can spank me if I'm wrong, but it's because the warm air, we've had warm air move in, and when you have cold moisture, you essentially create a steam situation. Fog is just steam, right? I mean, it's
like
hot. It's hot hitting moist cold, and that's steam.
It's like condensation on your glass of ice water.
Yeah. I mean,
You think they teach that in the public schools anymore? No, they're too busy with DEI and CRT. It's Education Choice Month.
Yes, it is.
Our week.
Governor
and we're going to
touted
talk with Susan Pendergrass from Show Me at 7:10. So we're going to ask her if that's something that if she was the director of education for DESE, if that's something she would mandate, that people would understand the physics of fog.
I don't really need to understand the physics of fog, but I would prefer to understand how to defog my windshield. Because I feel like no matter what, it's always foggy. And I feel like no matter, like, is it cold? Is it hot? What am I trying, like, how do I?
On the inside?
I don't know.
Or on the outside? On the inside.
It's a mess.
Steph, if you hold your breath, there will be less hot air
inside
the car.
Hannah.
What is with Hannah? First it's ageism with me, and now it's like
No, that wasn't
hot air with her.
She's feeling spicy this morning.
That wasn't a diss.
Oh, accusing her of hot air.
When you exhale, there's warm air.
So stop breathing in your car?
I was trying to be a smart aleck. I wasn't trying to be mean.
Oh, I thought you were accusing her of a lot of hot air.
No.
Maybe you should go back to wearing a mask. In the car.
I know this, that your description of what causes fog is spot
true?
on. Yeah, I think I think it is. I mean, you know,
on a stream.
I'm not a meteorologist, but I report on it almost every day, especially this month. I've been in touch with him almost every day. But yeah, you are spot on. There were a couple things yesterday. I don't know if people noticed it, but the governor got a couple digs in there yesterday. He said multiple times, not federal money, not federal money. Anybody catch that yesterday? This is state money, not federal money.
Then he paused for effect.
Well, exactly. And see, what happens is on his Twitter page, these progressives like to say, well, yeah, thank Biden for this, or thank President Biden. And I think the governor obviously was pointing that out, but also there have been Democrats who have said he has defunded public education. In fact, Jess Piper has said that the Republicans have defunded or are defunding public education. He was saying yesterday that in his administration, they've increased funding for K-12 education by $700 million since 2018. And he says, I'll note that's all state funding, not the federal government. So he was touting it. Now, he did get some criticism. Mary Elizabeth Coleman last week was saying she wanted to see him, not spend as much, but this is a big spending budget. Governor's very proud of it, though, but it's basically a $53 billion budget. It's a record-setting budget. Will it go in, will they approve it and everything he asked for? No. But there were a lot of big things in there. But I thought the education thing was a big one. But he said that multiple times, state money, not federal money. And by the way, the I-70 thing, that's all state money. That some of those are general revenue dollars, state money. So
I did get a kick out of.
Yeah,
if you look
he
at
talked about that
on governor.mo.gov. You look at a little summary of what he said, and he talked about all of the bullet points of the things he's done. That's with his last address. Yeah. You might expect that. Grew state revenues by 40% since 2018
through sales tax primarily.
Left 1 point. Well, and how about ARPA money?
No,
that wasn't federal money.
He's saying that the bulk of the
internal revenues grew by 40%.
That's what he was saying. That
left $1.5 billion on the bottom line for the next administration. Created over 100. Why do politicians? I like Governor Parson. Don't get me wrong. Why do they say they created jobs? Can anyone explain that to me? The governor never creates a job. The state never creates a job. The state only takes wealth. It never creates wealth. Governments never, ever create wealth. Only private individuals and the corporations and the work and the toil of their sweat and the sweat of their brow. That's the only thing that creates wealth.
I'll push back a little bit on you there. I mean, the governor's involved in several organizations, be it Missouri Partnership or like Hawthorne Foundation, where the whole purpose, or not the whole purpose, but a lot of those organizations are for attracting new projects. And in that instance, you've got these huge corporations that are going to create these jobs no matter what. And it's just a matter of where they put it. And so Missouri is competing against Kansas. They're competing competing against Tennessee. They're competing against, and so some of that, I do think it matters what your policy is and how receptive your governor is to, being a business-friendly community. And those relationships have, I think, landed some projects that those jobs would have been created somewhere else, but now they're landing in Missouri.
It should have been said, the pro-business environment that the administration and the General Assembly.
You're getting lawyerly on
us. We created the environment so private individuals could create jobs. I'm serious about that. We've come to a point in this country when people expect the government to do things, and rhetoric like this, you might call it a small thing, but this incrementally, it's like small jabs in a fight. It eventually, I need a job. I want the government to, now there's unemployment, and the government sponsors unemployment, and the government makes it clear that they're now in bed with unions, and they sponsor unions getting in bed, having to strong-arm government. The government never, ever, ever writes a check and creates a job except for government workers, and that's sad if that's the way we're creating jobs.
Well, and I want to, but I agree with Stephanie on this. I understand what you're saying, but the governor actually, I don't think he's saying what you're saying he said. He was talking about the fact that they've had 3 separate tax cuts, and the tax cuts have actually raised the revenue. Ronald Reagan always said that. When you cut taxes, revenue to the Treasury goes up.
Yes.
Now, Democrats say that's not the case. You could make the argument depending on who you talk to. But the governor says when he took office in 2018, Missouri was ranked 42nd for GDP growth, last among our Midwest neighbors. According to him, Missouri's now 23rd in the nation. That's almost a 20-slot increase in the Midwest top 5. 3 tax cuts decreasing Missourians' tax burdens by over 20%. Now, he did get a lot of bipartisan standing ovations for a number of things, the child care tax credit, state employee pay raise. But I did notice when he did tout the tax increase, it was the Republicans who were clapping the Democrats.
And to his credit,
the Democrats were not standing.
The bullet point does say created 110,000 jobs and brought $14.5 billion in new business investment. If they'd have flipped that and said, bought $14.5 million in new business investment through sound tax policy and pro-business policies, which then allowed the businesses to create 110,000 jobs, I'd have been standing. They wouldn't have. They'd had to taken me out of the chamber and applauding.
Well, and he didn't write the bullet point.
I know. I'm just nitpicking here.
I understand, but he's not saying the government created it. But I do think, to your point, in Jefferson City, people up here in Columbia have no idea. They really don't know how big the state government is in Jefferson City. There's 9,000, let's say 9,500 people that work at the University of Missouri. You throw in another 5,000 University Hospital. State government Jefferson City employs 14,000 people. So he's proposing a 3.2% pay raise on top of the 8.7%. That's a significant pay raise. What it's going to mean is there's going to be money coming into that'll affect the businesses, but the other businesses that compete for the workers in Jefferson City will probably have to raise their pay too to compete with that. Well, I think that's a big deal.
Unless
that state employee pay raise is a big deal.
Maybe they're just matching what business is taking away from their opportunity. I mean, who's the chicken and the egg? I mean, I think they're trying to keep pace with business. But either way you cut it, you have to watch out about that leap. Daily DC Rundown. Lots going on in the political and DC world, Stephanie, and I wanted to play this for you. This has been making the airwaves. Listen to this conversation that occurred between Carrie Lake and Jeff DeWitt in Arizona last year.
So what's going on? What is? I'm assuming this is our friend.
This is back east. There are very powerful people that want to keep you out.
Oh no, they do.
But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is in a big way.
That conversation blew up, I think, now 2 days ago.
Who is they?
Good question. The powers that be, the people in D.C.
Wow. Because she's running against Kristen Sinema, right, in Arizona.
She's trying to run for Senate, and they're basically saying, we will pay you to stay out of the race. Now, that was their state GOP chair, who then yesterday we found out resigned after this call came out. But Arizona is a really important state. A lot of eyes are on it as we approach the next cycle, and this does not bode well.
We continue to see fallout from the New Hampshire primary. There seems to still be division within the party.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. And Haley is full steam ahead, to many people's surprise. And
as a woman, what do you think? I saw some stuff on social media yesterday. I'll ask this of you and Hannah. About Donald Trump's comments that night, Tuesday night, about her dress, sort of making fun of, so the lady comes up in a flashy dress, and what do you think about that? Does that bother you? Or is that just politics?
It doesn't bother me at all.
Okay. Does that bother you, Hannah?
It's Trump, so I take it with a grain of salt.
And we've covered on this show. I mean, I comment on her outfits. I mean, I think it matters what you wear. And I think, for dudes, it's hard to, mess up your outfit because the only thing you really pick is your tie. But no, I mean, who was it? It was Ron Paul who lost his fake eyebrow in one of the debates. I mean, I think both men and women are fair game.
It was a nice dress, though.
Stage.
It was a pretty dress. I really enjoyed. No, my wife commented on what a nice dress that was.
Well, Haley has announced that she has spent $4 million on 2 ad buys in South Carolina, so it is full steam ahead for her. At the same time, we are seeing RFK collecting signatures, and he is going to be on the ballot. He was on the ballot in New Hampshire, but he is on the ballot in Utah, which is also coming up. And then Trump is back in court today in the defamation trial. And She outdid me the other day because I saw on her Instagram that she had like 9 drinks one morning, which I usually have a lot of drinks, but 9 is like a new record, I think.
No, it was like different cups and water bottles that I had sitting on my desk is what it was.
I think it was yesterday, for the first time I remember since hosting the show here, that you had to cut out during a break to use the bathroom. Because you said you had kept your Stanley Cup filled all morning.
Yeah.
If you drink 9 drinks in the morning, you're going to have to visit the restroom. But yes, no, LaCroix is the best. Hannah, you just have to like...
No, this is what LaCroix tastes like, okay? It's sparkling water, and someone whispered the name of a fruit from 3 doors down. Okay.
I would tend to agree. Yeah.
Oh, it's delicious.
It's not sweet enough for me.
Oh, I kind of like, coffee's kind of bitter. I love, like, my favorite recently has been a Topo Chico, which is just the sparkling water, and you squeeze, like, a whole lemon in it. Yeah. Oh, so good.
Looks like a cerveza. It does. It looks like a Corona.
I love a liquid death, too.
Dos Equis.
Yeah.
It comes in a bottle, right?
It does come in a glass bottle, which kind of makes it feel fancy.
There you go.
I'll pay $7 at the airport for
I know, not
water.
me. John Marsh, what's your favorite soft drink du jour?
I'm not a big soft drink guy. I'm sitting here with my black Caldi's coffee. You know,
I thought you were going to say Bud Light.
Just plain
not
old,
just for breakfast anymore.
Plain old coffee.
I have raised some concerns. A lot of the energy drinks that I drink are in slim cans, and I put them in like my insulated brewmate, and I have been told before that it looks like I'm drinking an alcoholic like seltzer that would come in a slim can. So if you see that on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook feed, I promise it is an energy drink.
Have you seen the Liquid Death cans, Randy? They look like this, but they
look like tall boys.
I took one
they
to
look like malt liquor cans.
What is Liquid Death?
It's water.
It's water?
It's water.
Or tea. They're coming out with some tea.
But they have some sparkling water and flavor, but most of the time it's just plain water. But I took one to an Ashland Alderman meeting, and they thought, everyone's like, what is that?
And the whole point of why they designed the can like that, right, is so that you can, if someone's trying to not drink, they can still almost kind of blend in a little bit at social gatherings.
Yeah, it got super popular, I believe, at concerts and like festivals, and that's the first time I was introduced to it. And I was at a Morgan Wallen concert festival thing, and they were selling it by the case because it was like August and it was hot.
Liquid Death.
And so, yeah, you could buy cases of water and drink it. And then, yeah, I mean, I think also it's in a can, and I don't love when it's really hot. I don't love having a bottle of water because that plastic like leaches out into the water.
You get all of those xenoestrogens.
So I would prefer a can.
Foreign estrogens and estrogen-like compounds. But if you had a Stanley Cup, you wouldn't have to worry about it.
You don't have a Stanley Cup. You've got a Contigo, but that's the best coffee. Actually, that model specifically, I have many of them, and I love those.
Tomorrow on Feel Good Friday, I'm going to bring something in that will make you feel good.
Are you getting me a Stanley Cup?
Nope, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I have. Well, it's not for you.
Donuts?
I'm just going to show off to you.
Casey's breakfast pizza.
No. We haven't done that in a long time.
I tried to bring in donuts the other day. John Marsh, what do you think of this? I bring in donuts for the group. In the ice during the ice storm.
You were just trying to prove that
I took
the roads
my
weren't that
big
bad.
A truck. I went to the whatever Petromart between here and home, out of my way, and I got some Long John donuts.
And they were really good.
And one of the members of the crew, I won't say who they are, said, "Is there cream in those donuts?" I was like, "I don't know. I asked for some Long John donuts. I don't know. I don't do cream." I'm like, "Hello?"
The radio is super bad for your waistline because the same day you brought in donuts, there were so many cupcakes in the break room. Yeah. I ate one. They were really good. But we were stuck here because of the ice. So I opted for a cupcake instead of a donut.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen this, but I wanted to ask you about it, and maybe you can unpack this a little bit as the day goes on. But I saw this article. I went down into the weeds on a Heritage Foundation article. Was it legal to appoint Jack Smith in the first place? It was about special counsel and Hans von Spakovsky. I love that name, Hans von Spakovsky.
You know him? He's cool. He comes to all of my conferences.
Great guy. Yeah, I've had him on the show several times. And I guess the theory, there's been a brief filed, or is it called an amicus or something?
Yes.
By the Supreme Court by Shar Jaffe LLP on behalf of former Attorney General Ed Meese. Ronald Reagan's Ed Meese, and 2 law professors. And what they're claiming is that because he's a private, he wasn't a U.S. attorney at the time or something, there's all kinds of interesting theory about that. Raises serious and fundamental questions of whether Garland had the constitutional and statutory authority to appoint Smith as a special counsel. Jack Smith, a private citizen, was appointed as a special counsel. And so they go through all of this, and I just thought as an attorney, it'd be interesting if you could unpack this for us sometime, because, there's been so much nefarious abuse of the justice system against Donald Trump in this case. But we talk about it how, well, if it can happen to Trump, it can happen to anyone, And you wonder to what extent, they can really do this. I mean, no one ever has really called out the basic question, could he do that? Everyone just assumed the president can appoint whoever he wants for a special counsel. And we, the non-lawyer people, go, well, okay, how would he do it? Wouldn't lawyers tell him you better not do that because it might be illegal?
I mean, we have special parameters here in Missouri that the Attorney General's office, if they have a conflict, they can appoint people, assistant or special, I don't think it's deputy. I think it's special AG. In fact, my firm got it's a pretty formalized process. And so when a state agency needs to be represented by someone who's not the Attorney General, they go through this process of vetting you and then appointing you. Mm-hmm. And then I would say also outside of the government, when, especially among with big companies, I mean, the onboarding process is pretty involved. And, there's been situations where I think I've spent an entire day answering questions about my situation just to get onboarded for a large company. And so you would think, in some of these situations, some of these issues that are coming out should have been known. Yeah. On the front.
Well, didn't Andrew Bailey do that with the Kim Gardner thing? Didn't he wasn't there some kind of a objective outside person that got involved in that?
Yeah, they can do that. Yeah. And then I know the Attorney General has certain, statutory powers and constitutional powers. And I know they were, when Kim Gardner exited, even when Wesley Bell came in, he was on our show and said, we're over there taking on some cases and helping them out, and using our staff to make sure that office is going. But certainly, some of these conflicts and issues should have been vetted on the front end, I feel like.
Meese and the law professors argue that regulations that were promulgated by Janet Reno, former Attorney General, after the independent counsel law lapsed and was not renewed, which allow the appointment of someone who is not a federal employee as a special counsel, are unconstitutional and were beyond her power to create. The Attorney General, they say, can appoint a private citizen to assist a U.S. attorney acting as a special counsel, but not to replace him. Now, that I find interesting. That's the kind of stuff I would think that you would that would just almost make you as excited as the New Hampshire primary. Have you come down from the New Hampshire primary yet? I know you were.
It was kind of less exciting than I think it's over. So, and it was crazy. I actually spoke with someone last night who said I set my alarm and I got up early just to hear the show because there was so much news in Missouri yesterday. And I was like, and we barely even talked about New Hampshire. We spent most of the morning talking about Missouri, but they didn't seem too bothered by that. And New Hampshire kind of got overshadowed by all of the things that are happening in Missouri. But I think, when the state, and I think you want the state to be really particular if they're choosing outside counsel. Typically, we're more expensive than your salaried employee in the government, right? And you want them to be, and so I think these things do matter. I mean, it seems like when you're picking, someone not in or when you're appointing people with special governmental powers, that's a serious thing.
It is. And I just thought it was interesting because, it's funny. You go down the road and you just sort of take the bait and you drink the Kool-Aid and you think, okay, well, yeah, I don't like what Jack Smith's doing, but and then someone with, the Heritage Foundation and their attorneys and Ed Meese, they've got their credentials are valid, and they raise these interesting issues. And I'm thinking, holy cow, why are we just hearing about this now? I'm sure that it's going to be walked. No one's going to walk back what he's doing now at this point.
But you think about it in the context of the Fani Willis stuff, right? And who she picked to prosecute Trump, and how that should have been probably vetted a little bit sooner than, all of this is coming out on the back end.
I don't know.
Gee, how about a Missouri one to zero in on about people not vetting people? How about the investigator that a certain St. Louis city prosecutor used to look into Eric Greitens, and that kind of blew up in their face.
Exactly.
No, you're right. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk about something that you should we're going to get it out of our system today, Hannah. I've got some doomsday news when we come back. Some doomsday news. I know that, producer Hannah. And Stephanie, you join in that. But John, those of us who have walked the earth a little bit longer,
Okay.
sometimes we have a different perspective on things. It's called wisdom. And
Depends who you're talking to, but yeah, we call it wisdom.
I was going to say, he couldn't even make it through that without laughing.
Now, many of you may not know that there's this organization who produces now for the last, since 1947-ish, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. And this was all born of the scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project, which led to the atomic bomb. Some, of course, went into nuclear weapons research. Some went into other nuclear-related research academically. They have come out with the latest version of the Doomsday Clock. And it's been an annual report. And it ticks closer to midnight, and midnight being Armageddon. Bum, bum, bum.
The end of the world, basically, right?
Yeah.
So where are we? How close are we?
Well, the problem is, if you look back at the progression, it turns out that back before 19. Okay, so if you look back here, 1947, it was 7 minutes to midnight.
Yeah.
1949, 3 minutes to midnight.
Ooh.
When we tested the hydrogen bomb in 53, 2 minutes to midnight. But at the end of the Cold War, somehow it went backwards, 17 minutes to midnight. So the clock is not...
They can ratchet it back.
Yeah, that's what I find
really
funny about the whole thing.
A clock works.
Yeah, but this year it's only 90 seconds to midnight. 90 seconds to midnight.
That's the worst.
No.
Is that the worst it's ever been?
It was 90 seconds to midnight. No, that's the worst. In 23 and again in 24. It's 90 seconds. War in Ukraine, the nuclear proliferation, and the massive store of nuclear armaments throughout the world.
It also says climate and AI.
They're concerned about AI and irresponsible use. But these are the people that really helped create the stigmatization of nuclear war and nuclear, which is good, because I think if you think about a world led by humans who can be, look at what's going on in the well of the Missouri Senate. People can be crazy, right? So, really, this is craziness. This is craziness what's going on down there. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. It's just craziness.
I don't get the terror from humans, I guess, because also humans are like self-interested. So, the fact that they would like blow up the whole world, no one wants to blow themselves up. Well, I guess some people do.
Have you talked to the Muslims over in Iran?
Well, that's true. But I just, the thing that freaks me out is really like natural disasters. And the only time I really felt like the whole world, we're all going to die is when I was at Yellowstone. And the
Yellowstone?
I think so. And the
super volcano underneath Yellowstone.
And you could see the earth bubbling from below. And they were like, we're, 2 decades beyond when we were supposed to have like the
ultimate volcanic
have
eruption?
the volcano and cover the entire United States with like volcanic ash or something. Anyway,
the New Madrid fault line is another one that is supposed
New
to be
Madrid
or whatever.
Yeah.
The day the earth stood still.
Yes.
Isn't it overdue for a big old earthquake?
Yeah, I went on that tour and they basically said we've had one of these events, blah 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 blah, and we're 30 years past when this thing was supposed to blow, and it could be any minute. As you're standing there and watching the earth boil, and I thought I had trouble sleeping for a little bit.
Yeah, some of us can relate back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, right, Randy?
Yep. I remember as a tot doing atomic drills, and remember the atomic sign with the alternating yellow and red in a circle and looked like sort of like a test pattern. And there were designated places where if the bombs are coming over, that's where you go.
Which didn't they tell you to just like hunker down under your desk?
That was for the New Madrid fault. No, seriously, when I was a kid,
those are for armed shooters. That's for when
I was a kid, we had earthquake drills or whatever, and they would at Morrow Heights, they would come over the intercom and they would like literally bang a pot with like a wooden spoon. That was the sign, and you had to jump under your desk. I'm like, if we really had an earthquake, would that help us?
Well, there are people, though, who have accused Donald Trump because he's a very quixotic guy. He's very reactive, very defensive. He does some crazy things, says some crazy things, just pop out of the spur of the moment. It's like, whoa, people worry about people like Donald Trump, people like
I don't worry
Kim Jong-il.
I don't worry about Donald Trump.
Putin.
No, I worry about Putin. I don't worry about Donald Trump because I think he'd push the button first. And so, but I worry about people like Joe Biden who would like unknowingly push the button, right? Or like
accidentally sit on it or something.
Yeah. So I have fewer concerns about Donald Trump.
He would think it's the vending machine for Ted Drew's frozen custard at the St. Louis airport. I think I'm getting a concrete. Oops, it's the red button.
Yes.
Hopefully he can't remember the code.
Speaking of frozen custard, does Andy's ought to put a frozen custard thing out at our airport here, or one of the frozen custard joints?
I've been very disappointed lately because they've been out of the rice cakes and they're not refilling them regularly.
Rice cakes?
Oh, yeah. Yes. That's the best part about the airport.
Rice cakes?
Quaker rice cakes. Yeah. Quaker provides free rice cakes at the airport. But like,
you're kidding me.
No.
Made in Colombia.
They're made in Colombia and they have
I didn't know this.
and the fog may have played a role.
Oh, that's just awful. Awful, awful, awful. Well, joining us now is Susan Pendergrass, Director of Education Policy at Show Me Institute. It's National Education Choice Week. Susan, you have to be pumped over that, huh?
Yeah, this has been going on for quite a few years, National School Choice Week, and it's a great time to remind folks that there are other ways to organize public education. So, yeah, we're excited about it.
And, of course, yesterday was the governor's State of the State address, and the legislature, if they ever get their engine rolling in the Senate, might get something done, education choice being at least on many people's agendas. I'm not sure it's as widespread and universally popular even among conservatives as I would like it to be. You want to weigh in on that, Stephanie?
I think it is. I mean, we heard from, I think Caleb Rowden said yesterday, like, that's his number one thing. And
it's for him, it is.
Yeah. And you know, and that was a path. I think Scott Fawn suggested it on the midweek update. Hey, if we could push this school choice bill, if you got your school choice bill way, Caleb, would that clear the way for some of this other stuff in the Senate? And he wouldn't quite commit to that and say, if I get my way, I'll give them their way. But certainly, I mean, we've been, us school choice advocates have been hopeful, but we haven't been getting it done. Maybe this year is the year.
Susan, I was looking at an article on the Show Me Institute website, showmeinstitute.org, by one of your staff, James Schulz, about education spending. Where does the money go? And I know you spend a lot of time looking at that. And it's interesting. I mean, wow, he did a calculation about like how many students it takes to generate the equivalent amount of money a teacher's salary. And over time, it's gone down and down and down. What does all that tell us?
So, I mean, this is a really serious thing that James wrote about. Our education spending goes up. The number of students we have has gone down. It's hard for folks to understand when the spending per student statewide in Missouri last year was at least $15,000, if not more. So you have 20 kids in the classroom, and that's $300,000, and folks are scratching their heads like, well, wait a minute, where's that money going? Because the teacher's not getting it, right? But what's happened is, as enrollment has continued to decline, staffing in Missouri has gone up by, I think, 700%, according to what James was talking about. And that means, you know, districts and school boards and superintendents have just chosen this path of hiring more and more people. And, you know, public school teachers come with contracts that are very difficult to break. So when your enrollment starts to go down, you can't necessarily just get rid of teachers. People don't even, you know, really like to talk about that. So spending stays the same or goes up even as the number of kids go down. And that's not a system that would ever work in a private school, right? Like, we need to make our finance system of public education more responsive to the number of kids we're serving, because we know that they're going to be going down. DESE, the Department of Elementary Secondary Education, in their budget request this year already like threw down the gauntlet and said, well, we've got fewer kids, so we need to give us more per student, right? Like, we need the total money to be the same, even though there are fewer kids, because we have these staffing commitments.
Susan, thanks for joining us. The governor talked about education quite a bit yesterday, and he did mention school choice. It was part of what he talked about briefly in his address, and also talked about funding, which has been in my news stories. What stuck out to you the most? Transportation. I mean, there were about 8 different things he actually talked about in terms of education. What stuck out to you the most? Something either you agreed with or disagreed with, or both, about what he said yesterday about education?
Well, I do think it's interesting in the last year of his terms, right, that he finally, I've been talking a lot about that we need more strong leadership at the state level when it comes to education. And certainly there are governors to our north, Kim Reynolds of Iowa, Sarah Sanders in Arkansas, that have made this the cornerstone of their policy slate. And we haven't seen that as much in Missouri. I appreciate the governor's talking about it now, but, you know, this is going to be an election year, and folks are going to be thinking more probably about the next governor than they are thinking about this governor. But we do know this, that schools and districts have gotten a lot of money in the last few years from the pandemic. I mean, a lot. The Show Me Institute's we're getting close to updating our website for the last year's numbers, the one that ended in 2023 spring. Spending per student is mind-boggling. Many districts are over $30,000, over $40,000 because of all of the stimulus money. And so now there's already talk about a fiscal cliff. And, you know, I think we're going to be hearing more and more about education spending, including transportation, because when you go really, really high, then it comes back down to normal. You could interpret that as a cliff, right? And that's what we're already starting to hear, is that spending on education is going to be a big problem. Now, when it comes to choice, I do think that public school choice, anyway, has been moving a little bit in the House. There's a bill by Representative Pollitt that has moved out of committee. I wouldn't be surprised to see it on the House floor soon. And I think that this is the one that got almost to the governor's desk last year. And there's always, there's generally more motivation in January and February to get these things done. You got to hold that motivation through April and May and get it to the governor's desk. But I'm hopeful that we might see at least public school choice happening, and then if not, expansion of our scholarship program. And Caleb Rowden, don't quote me, Caleb, I apologize if I'm putting words in his mouth, but I think he has said he'd like this to be part of his legacy, that we get at least charter schools outside of St. Louis and Kansas City out into our suburban districts. And there are 3 bills going through on that. And I'm optimistic we'll get something.
Well, Susan, I can speak, I think, for many of our listeners and probably conservatives across the state, that we're so disappointed that when you have the examples of, as you said, Arizona, Arkansas, Iowa, others moving at much more accelerated pace, why we can't get more towards that ultimate goal. I don't understand it. Susan Pendergrass, Director of Education Policy at Show Me, joins us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Andrew Koenig, the senator from the Freedom Caucus, is the guy sponsoring a couple of bills to leverage tax credits to fund the home education and private education. He talks about most scholars. I know he's floated this before, and that would be something, since Andrew Koenig's running for treasurer, that he'd be the guy running the program. Is that an option this year, or with all the fighting and the backhanded stuff in the Senate, is this one just going to lay there on their side?
I hate to talk to the personalities, but it's hard to say. I want to stay optimistic. But yes, we have a scholarship program. It's quite small. It serves a couple of thousand students, and compared to our neighbors that have them for every student. But it also requires that the groups that give out the scholarships have to fundraise, have to literally go out and get the donations. And that has made it a little complicated. It's very limited in which communities the kids can get scholarships. So Senator Koenig has proposed expanding that program, which I think would be great. I'd love to move that towards like a universal eligibility. He's also talked about, as of this year in Oklahoma, if you send your child to a private school, you can take the amount that you paid for tuition straight off of your Oklahoma state tax bill. So essentially, if you pay $5,000, you can take it off what you owe the state for your state income taxes. And there has been a bill submitted that's kind of similar to that. Not quite like Oklahoma's, but to your point, there's some talk about how do we get people state funding when they want to homeschool or have a micro school or send their child to a private school, and could we do it through Missouri state income tax? So there's been talk about that. I don't know if there's a lot of momentum behind that one, but I do think there's momentum behind improving our existing Most Scholarship program that is run out of the Treasurer's office.
Susan, absenteeism is a huge problem. In Columbia, Missouri, the public schools saw a 22% drop in attendance last year. I know you've chronicled absenteeism in your various statistical reports. Ohio politicians and legislators are contemplating paying students, whether they're kindergartners or ninth graders, various incentives to attend school. Your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, I just did a podcast with Matt Malthus of AEI last week on this topic. He says it's the number one problem facing public education in this country. It is so much bigger and worse than folks realize. And you can almost go district, but AEI's got a really cool map that you can zoom in and out on Missouri. District by district, the rates of students who are chronically absent, which means they miss 18 days in the school year, has doubled. So if it used to be 10%, in our better performing districts, it's 20. If it used to be 25 in St. Louis, it's more than half. It's more than 50. Almost district by district, the number of kids who are, that's a lot, 10% of the school year that they're missing has doubled. And if we don't get kids in school and in their seats, they can't learn anything. You have kids, we don't know where they are. If their parents are working, they're not showing up, and we're not sure where they are. Now, paying students, that's not the first time that's happened. It seems a little dramatic. There's, I don't know if you've ever known of a school district that does a perfect attendance rally at the end of the year. Sometimes they'll give away a car to high school students. There have been incentives in place to get kids to show up and come to school. When I was in school, there was a truant officer, so we used the stick. We used to use the stick instead of the carrot, but we have got to. Missouri test scores are down. They're down below where they were before the pandemic. We have not recovered, and a big part of that is what's called chronic absenteeism. If we don't start to figure that out and address it like the problem it is, then we're not going to get even back to where we were, which wasn't great.
And it's a call to parents to be responsible for making that an expectation. John, Marsh, maybe you remember. I remember back in St. Louis where I attended school, the only incentives that we aspired to were straight A tickets to the St. Louis Cardinal ball games. That was the big deal.
Oh, there you go.
You got credit for getting straight A's. You got an award, not just for showing up and having a pulse. You know, I mean, the standards for why people get rewards these days are just astounding to me. I don't get it. But I'm going to get off that soapbox, and I'm going to applaud. I'm going to applaud Susan's soapbox at Show Me Institute. Yeah, I did. I saw that and heard part of that podcast, and you can access that with the American Enterprise Institute and Susan Pendergrass. On the showmeinstitute.org website. Hey, Susan, thanks for all the work you're doing. Let's make sure we get everyone to coalesce behind education choice. Miracle on the Hannah or on the Hudson or on the something. What's up?
I knew that you would just be really excited to talk about weird crime stories.
I am.
Yeah, we're going across the pond.
Okay.
This sounds like a story that would maybe start with Florida man, but it's UK woman this time. And she got busted for tampering with something in the workplace. She was a night janitor for a company that had lots of office space. And folks were starting to complain that the coffee in the break room didn't taste right.
Oh, no.
It tasted
a little wang to it, huh?
Oh.
Yeah, the powdered coffee, it wasn't tasting right.
Yeah.
They went and checked the cameras after a couple weeks of this, and they saw this night janitor named Karen Beal put on latex gloves and was shaking like the grounds can, and had obviously put something in it. So they called the authorities, and they ran a test on those coffee grounds, and they found some weird things in there. Randy, you want to tell me what sildenafil is? Do you know that one?
It's one of those things that helps intimacy happen better with men.
Yeah. So
the yellow pill.
I think that's the little blue pill.
What happens if women drink this coffee?
They might. There are some allegations that may help their sexuality as well. It's,
okay.
Sildenafil is Viagra.
Yes.
Okay.
So they found crushed up Viagra and a different medication for high cholesterol, apparently.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, maybe she was just looking out for the office employees.
She's starting a new podcast called Get Up Mid-Missouri, I think.
Yeah, very good.
So, yeah, she got busted. She was charged. Of course, it's the UK, so they have different terms for things. But she was accused of trying to cause harm, injury, or annoyance.
Well, I would think some of the
if it lasts for longer than 4 hours, then you need to seek a healthcare.
Can you imagine being a dude in the office and not knowing what is wrong with you that day?
You're like, my coworker's looking pretty hot today.
There you go. We heard the detectives referred to her as a hardened criminal.
Oh, whoa. All right. I think John's going to be a winner of the week for that one. That's
But seriously, can you imagine as a dude just sitting at work going, oh my God, what is happening?
You're like, I used to have this problem in middle school, and it's suddenly back.
So I don't know why this woman thought that she needed to put Viagra in high cholesterol pills.
Did her boyfriend work there or something? Yeah, I mean, was she dosing someone she knew?
And they had high cholesterol pills too.
Yeah.
Like Lipitor. Huh.
It just says cholesterol medicine.
I don't understand that.
That's not where I saw this going, because I've been
no one did
freaked out by coffee lately, because I heard people in hotels pee in the coffee maker. So
What?
Yes, it was on social media, and so I haven't been able to use a hotel coffee maker in a long time. And then I also hear on airlines, if you get coffee, they can't or they don't clean your eyes, the coffee maker. So I've just been I only drink coffee. Well, I drink it here at Zimmer, but it's been freaking me out.
Okay.
Have to check the cameras.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, she was even smart enough to wear latex gloves when she was committing the crime, so that she didn't leave behind any fingerprints. But the camera,
camera got her.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. I mean, the depravity of people. What is going through people's minds? It's just crazy.
And other body parts.
Yeah, the dude. There's Stephanie.
Good morning.
And Mr. Brian Hauswirth. How are you, buddy?
Good to see you, sir.
Likewise. The fog has not lifted. John Marsh, who's never in a fog, even when it's foggy out. How you doing, John?
I'm hiding in a fog right now. Boy.
We're gonna talk a little bit of law here in a minute. I'm going to ask our resident attorney a question. I heard it on a podcast, 2:30, 3 o'clock this morning. Yes, I rarely sleep, and it relates to the whole what's going on down at the border. I'm fascinated by the fact that Abbott keeps pulling in and building and staging razor wire in bold defiance of the Supreme Court temporary order on the ability for the feds to come in and clamp the wire and cut the wire. So, but before that, Stephanie sent me an article the other day that was interesting, and it was I don't know, maybe sort of in jest, but it was written by one of your tabloids, online tabloids.
Yeah, it's in the ABA Journal, so it came across my email.
To be a lawyer or a doctor? That is the question, by Marcel Strigberger. Albert Einstein said, try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. So you want to become a doctor or lawyer? So why did you decide you went to Truman, right?
Truman State, yep.
And what was your major in?
Political science.
Political science. And what headed you into the legal realm? Why did you decide to become an attorney?
That's a good question. And my last semester at Truman State, I came to the state capitol. I moved back home to Jefferson City. I did an internship in the Missouri Senate, actually, in the pro tem's office, and then went to graduate school, actually. I wasn't sure I wanted to be a lawyer. I thought maybe I'll be an academic, maybe I'll be a public policy expert. So spent almost more than a year working in the Senate. But I kind of figured out, I worked for an attorney, Senator Mike Gibbons at the time, and he was a lawyer. And even amongst the lobbyists, I kind of saw the respect of people who also, even if they weren't a practicing attorney, the respect that they were given, the deference they were given. And I thought, I really like politics. I like public policy. But I think even if I ultimately don't want to be a lawyer, I think the law degree will suit me well. And so went to law school. And then once I was there, and then once I got into litigation, I said, no, I want to be a lawyer. So I went totally the other way.
Not a Perry Mason kind of lawyer. You want to be
I'm a lawyer.
What is that? What is that? Now that's interesting for an attorney to say I'm a lawyer. What's the alternative? A lawyer that's not a lawyer? Well,
we know people who are in politics, for example. They have their JD, but they've never really been in a courtroom and they've never practiced.
I see.
Right? And so, and they're, and I'm thinking, anyway, so I don't refer to those
patent attorneys too, people with their specialties.
Well, and there are people that are transactional attorneys, and I would call them lawyers. I typically use that against politicians who they went and they got their their JD, and then they immediately went into politics, and they've never practiced law, in their life.
Now, so what do lawyers think of swashbuckling, litigating the final argument in the OJ case, lawyers? I mean, do you segregate those out as a separate kind of a lawyer or no?
No. I mean, I have friends who are,
trial lawyers.
Yeah, I don't do jury trials really. So and I don't do personal injury. All lawyers have different kinds of flavors. Yeah. I mean, doctors, right? Is there a certain type of doctor where you're like, oh, podiatrists, or they have their own kind of personalities?
No. But okay, so in the doctor world, everyone gets the same basic training, right? Which is, I assume, the same in the lawyer world. I mean, you get the same. You go to lawyer school for 3 years?
Law school for 3 years,
and then you would go to doctor school for 3 years or for 4 years. Then you can go. Then you do a residency.
And I wish law school had more of that. Essentially, you have to hope that someone will take pity on you as a young lawyer and give you basically a residency and pay you while they're essentially training you. And law schools take a lot of criticism for that, in that when you go to law school, you read the big cases, you learn about the law, but you learn virtually nothing about actually being a lawyer. And Mizzou does, they're getting better. You write an appellate brief, you might write some pleadings. They have competitions and they make you do a mock, mock trial or a mock argument, depending on, what you're involved in. But really, it's an on-the-job training for most people.
Which is interesting. So let me ask you this, because in the healthcare realm, is there anyone listening or anyone in the room here that thinks that the healthcare system isn't broken? that there's major problems with access to care, especially primary care, the long waits, the non-transparency. Okay. And I think a lot of us, this is not a personal criticism, but a lot of us look at the legal system and we look at the time it takes and the expense that shuts a lot of people out from civil litigation. Very expensive, because you can't get a public defender if you have a civil case. That doesn't happen. Are there lawyers? So there's doctors like me and many more now who are saying the system sucks and it needs to be fixed. And by God, I'm going to be disruptive and fix it. And we call out truth to power in our own system. Does that happen in the lawyer world?
I don't think, not as much with the healthcare industry.
Except maybe politicians.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, obviously, there's been lawyers in the legislature, and tort reform's been a big thing. I mean, St. Louis got named a judicial hellhole for many years in a row. And so, I think, we're people too. And so to the extent, that's driving up costs, I think we're affected by that. But, industries tend to stick together too. And you and I have talked about that a little bit. But this guy in his article basically said that doctors get all the esteem. No one, on a plane, everyone's like, is there a doctor? No one ever asked like an emergency for a lawyer. Is there a lawyer on board? We never.
In fact, they run the other way sometimes.
Yeah, he says on a crisis per capita basis, doctors get more esteem. I think it's interesting.
But he also takes a shot at you guys because he says, at least like in big cases, lawyers, like they're all named, and like the doctrines are all named after the client. And in doctor situations like diseases, they're all named after doctors. They take the credit and give the patient nothing.
By the way, speaking of, if anyone remembers me whining about my jury duty summons.
Yes.
So, are you calling in every day or what?
I have to call in once a week, and it's for 2 weeks. So I'm in the clear for this week.
Thanks, Ice Storm.
Yeah. So
good for you.
I just have to get through next week, hopefully, fingers crossed.
It's only 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Huh.
So
it's federal for her.
Bill wants to weigh in on the current. Bill, hi. You have a thought on this current issue? To become a doctor or a lawyer? Go ahead.
I don't know if it's an intelligent thought. Just first of all, I want to say I respect you, Stephanie. I'm just going to say this. The problem with healthcare is lawyers. Everybody's sue happy. You got your typical ambulance chasers out there that all these unnecessary tests have to be performed, and lawyers don't let doctors be doctors anymore. And Stephanie, don't take this as a dig on you, but I found this over the last 25 years that you go in for all these unnecessary tests with flu symptoms, and it prolongs your stay. And I just think everybody's sue happy.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, is it true? Thanks, Bill. Is it true that there is a glut of lawyers, and lawyers are not unhappy when there's a lot of law business to do?
No,
I've been told this by lawyers.
Really?
That there's just cranking out lawyers.
Well, I would say, not right now, and specifically not in what I do.
Okay.
I have a highly niche practice.
Yes.
And so I would say we would need more people in that space. And then if you see, law schools have been subject to many of the same problems that universities have been. And so when I went to Mizzou many years ago, it was standard that the incoming class would have 150. And I've heard, the last 2 years they're back to that. But for several years, they were almost down, I think, to like 90 kids. And so, you think about the impact that Mizzou law has on our state and our state bar. And, several years of, 2/3 of a class size, I think makes a difference. And so most people, be it the state or private, what I'm hearing now from, my colleagues in private practice and in government is, I can't find anyone to hire, just like everyone else. We need more people, I'm looking for somebody.
And the other thing that we have to point out, I respect you. I think
absolutely.
You do great. I respect the doctors.
The lawyers
as
that have helped me along the way, I just can't speak highly enough about. But I have told them, and I will tell you, because I live in a world that's like, something's broken, fix it, get it done. I think a lot of us look at the time lag and things drag out. The system is what bothers a lot of common people like me.
And to that very point, if I assume most of our listeners are for law and order. They're conservatives probably listening to us. I hear from them all the time. But folks, if you support law and order, you need to support paying these public defenders. I mean, that's something. These public defenders, Stephanie's nodding her head. I'm in court all the time. There's a guy named Kevin O'Brien. Do you know Kevin at all?
I don't think so.
He's a public defender, and he listens to the show. They are in court, and these guys are and a few women as well. It's primarily men, but they're running up and down. There's 3 floors up there, running up and down from courtroom to courtroom with their laptops. I believe they each have 500-600 cases apiece. It's just some astronomical amount, and I know the governor's put some money back in there for them over the years, but
David Tyson Smith has argued vociferously. I used it again there.
Exactly.
In their behalf.
Absolutely. In his
because
argument,
that slows up the system.
It slows up the system, and again, if you want, because the reality is, if they don't have adequate representation, you're not going to be able to put them on trial. But also, you want to be able to retain the people who are there. But I would say, I think of all the murder cases I've covered, it seems like I always run into Kevin O'Brien. He always seems to have the big cases. There's a guy named Daniel Hickman down there as well. But they literally are having to go from courtroom to courtroom. And it's just, I don't know how they keep track of it all. And they don't have I feel like they just don't have enough staff. That's just my impression. I'm down there a lot.
John, you agree?
Yeah. Well, I've family member who up until recently went to law school and then became an FBI agent and all. But, the private practice side of things, I know staff, like you said, it's challenges sometimes looking for staff.
Really?
Exactly. Well, and on the public defender front, I know our friend of the show, Jennifer Bukowski, gave a very generous donation several years back to the Boone County, and they had a wait list and all, the caseload was incredible. And so she said, here's some private money that we can use to try to, get more people on staff, get the wait list going and lower their caseload. And so I'd like, if people, it's something that I think people don't think about very often, but that was, I think, very generous. And certainly when I went to the Boone County bar meeting following that, they said, it's really helped us get on top of things.
And what Stephanie knows, as being an attorney, people on the outside, they think that the public defender and the prosecutors are down there arguing, fighting all the time. It really isn't the case. I've seen a few, where they get into a little bit. It's very rare.
But,
they get along very well.
And I mean,
session in the years leading up to the Civil War. 1850, a debate about slavery with none other than the Democrat from Missouri, Thomas Hart Benton, who opposed slavery, became so angry at his fellow Democrat, Henry Foote of Mississippi, that he verbally attacked him on the Senate floor, prompting Foote to pull a pistol from his desk and pointed at Benton. He was disarmed before he could shoot him. Another incident of violence, this in the Senate. Congressman Galusha Grow, a Republican, called his colleague Lawrence Keith from the Deep South a Negro driver. Keith attempted to choke Grow out on the floor. 50 other congressmen joined in. Representative Cadwallader Washburn grabbed William Barksdale and ripped off his wig. He tried to put it back on, but in his haste, put it on backwards. They said he looked so absurd trying to fight, but not able to see his opponents. That one came to an end. And then our one last year, the Senate committee, where Senator Mark Mullen of Oklahoma and Teamsters President Sean O'Brien were ready to come to blows. You know where to find me, any place, anytime. Cowboy O'Brien treated at Mullen. Mullen happened to be a former mixed martial arts fighter.
Wow.
And he said, "Catch me outside," I think is what he said.
That's what he said. And if we remember, took Bernie Sanders putting on his mittens to chill the pair out. And that's the rest of that story.
Well, and I think that that kind of behavior is fueled by we the people that back those legislators, right? And whoever's doing that, they feel as though they have a mandate, they have a calling to represent their constituency. And, so they get worked up over it. Speaking of which, in the wake of the committee chairs changing, 4 different Freedom Caucus members deposed and parking spaces moved.
Which, okay, out of all the things that happened to these Freedom Caucus members, the fact that people keep bringing up their parking spots is hilarious to me. I don't know why.
But it's a big deal because parking at the Capitol sucks.
Maybe I just don't fully understand how bad it is.
The thing was, it went down when Senate leadership decided to move their parking spaces. I know Bill Eigel, for one, said he had to find out on Twitter. Nobody even notified him.
We have some events with the Federal Society at the Capitol every year, and I am not, okay, you might think I'm a prima donna, but on a day-to-day basis, but I'm usually fine. But it's usually super cold or the weather's bad, and I have actually asked people to drive me and drop me off, and then
hey, no shame, I use my husband for that lots of times
because there's nowhere to park, and then usually I have a lot of stuff with me, and I've got heels, and and so it's like, can you just drive me and give me a ride because I'm in a hurry or whatever. And so that is the best way.
What about that parking garage? Does that fill up? Is that pretty filled up?
It does fill up.
Assigned parking.
Well, you can. I think the public can get there. I do know it fills up, and it's actually really cheap. It's like $8 a day or something, but it's like 2.5 blocks, and so right now a lot of people don't want to walk.
When we had our assigned press parking space for many years at the Capitol, which we don't anymore, it was academic trying to park in it because so oftentimes, not to call names, but lobbyists say they'd park there and go, hey, it's a $5 ticket. Where else can I park this close to the Capitol for $5?
Exactly. Well, and part of the problem is, Jeff City is hilly. And so you go down the other side and you're, down in a valley, and people certainly don't want to walk up the hill.
Stephanie,
it's good to huff it. It's good to huff it. It's good.
From the doctor.
You need to hoof it. That's good. Get you some exercise in the morning.
If only you knew someone who could give you a ride in Jeff City, Stephanie.
I pointed that out yesterday.
Is Missouri's 57th governor. Mike Parson joins us after a very rousing State of the State speech yesterday. Thanks for being with us, Governor.
Hey, good morning. How's everybody?
Doing good, and I think we're taking a look at the long list of accomplishments that you chronicled yesterday and some of the things that are on your priority list. We'd like to go through some of those as we move through this conversation. What kind of feedback have you gotten personally and officially in response to your address yesterday?
Well, of course, I was surrounded with family and friends last night, so it was pretty positive at my house. So I have to say, it's been very positive. I think when you mention the accomplishments and everything we've done, sometimes you just don't take time to realize what you have done, because in this arena, it's always like the next issue or the next session. And when we put all that together, we thought, for everything we've been through, to be able to do some of the things we've done, it's just been I was just humbled. I was honored to make those kind of accomplishments in today's world in the political arena. I'm just pretty proud of the people of this state and proud of what we have done in some of the most difficult times.
Now, when you reflect back, what do you think your legacy will be as Missouri's 57th governor?
Well, I am sure infrastructure, workforce development will be on that list. I hope people look at it, too, as a time when we brought stability in here. We got back to core values of who Missourians really are and just tried to bring integrity back to the government, to the governor's office, and just putting people first. I said that in the speech last night. It's just those are the things that really matter. Those are the reasons you come up here in the first place. And unfortunately, sometimes people just need to check their egos at the door and remember why they come up here, and that's to serve the public.
And you closed the address by talking about returning to the farm, and I think referencing the very notion of what our founding fathers, embodied and embraced, and that's sort of the citizen statesman, right? And I think we as conservatives really value that kind of humility in terms of just how much should governance and governors get into our business. And I know that you did a lot with regulatory reform as well to try to get the government out of the way.
Yeah, when you do in 5.5 years, take out 20% of the regulatory environment, those things just don't happen. And unfortunately or fortunately, COVID drove some of that when we did another 600. But the point of it is, when you go back there, most of that stuff should have never been on the books before. It's because some incident, something occurred in our history, and somebody just put a law or regulation in there. And when we talk about deregulating people, you're not deregulating regulations, you're deregulation for the people of the state. And people just want to live a life. They don't want government in their lives every day. And I think we've proven that by getting rid of a lot of that stuff.
Governor Mike Parson joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Governor, it's one of those things we talked to you so many times about in your tenure over there, and you were a big part of it. 3.2% pay raise for state workers. Jefferson City, and to a lesser extent Columbia, or company towns with state government and all. But in your time in the House and Senate, pay raises for state government has not always been a slam dunk, has it?
Well, it never has. They've been awful. They've been difficult through my entire career when I was here. But again, it's what you want to make a priority. And nobody really made a priority of that, because it's much easier to go out there and give something maybe more high profile or a building or something of that nature. But look, the everyday operations of government depend on good people working for government. And if you want to retain good people and you want to have people believe in the system, you're going to get more production out of it. And so, look, I'm not trying to make anybody rich in government. But what I am trying to do is I want to be competitive, and I want to retain good people just like everybody else does. And they deserve it. They deserve it. They day in and day out, they do a good job.
Governor, thanks so much. And with your budget recommendations, the state employee pay, by the way, since you became governor, has increased by about more than 20% since you took office. And we do appreciate you joining us live. I think most of what, and I've covered a lot of different angles in the news stories here on the Eagle and on KWS, Most of them pretty self-explanatory, but one, I think, very important one, and I need you to give us a little bit better idea of what it is. You referenced Congressman Sam Graves receiving a $90 million federal grant to be put towards I-70, and you said you're going to be announcing the recommendation to establish the I-44 Improvement Fund. Can you elaborate on that? It's two interstates, but how would that work?
Yeah, well, first of all, I-70 is the priority. I think we've set that example that has to be done first. And then, but you've got I-44, we've got other interstates in our states. But I-44, needless to say, is our next main, what I would say your next main highway system to really redo. But that $90 million frees up money to go to other projects. Plus, you're going to be able to leverage more money by doing that also with our own money. So anytime we can leverage federal money for whatever project it is, it frees up money for something else. And, there's no question, having Congressman Graves in the position he is as chairman, the position he sets in, is going to be a benefit to Missouri. And frankly, you need to take advantage of that while we can. When that opportunity is there, we need to be able to be up there and be ready to utilize those funds and to move Missouri forward. But it'll move I-44 significantly up on a timeline to really start making a real completion of I-44.
Thank you, Governor. That's great information, and it really helps. Thank you.
Governor Parson, I think at the front of most every conservative's mind as top three priorities from the voters' perspective would be education choice, initiative petition reform, property tax, or some other type of ongoing tax relief. You've made a great start at it with 3 major tax cuts during your administration. Are you committed to pushing the objectively dysfunctional legislature, particularly the Senate, to getting these things achieved?
Well, there's no question we'd like to see IP reform from the governor's office. And there's maybe other ways to do that. And I'll just give you a quick example. If the House would come up with an IP bill and send it down to the Senate, that cures all problems. And then you don't have to fight on who gets to do an IP bill. They send it over there, they pick it up and do it. But kind of shutting down the whole system for that. Look, I handled IP when I was in the Senate, when we were fighting the animal rights groups and all of that years ago, and it was on the table last year and the year before that. It didn't get done. It's kind of ingenuine for anybody to all of a sudden sit around and say, you got to do it right now when you have opportunity to do it before. So I don't normally get into those battles, but, to do the steps we've made towards education, to do what we're trying to do for IP in the future, all I can tell you is I feel like we have built a good foundation for them to build on. Now, whatever their actions are, I don't know. But, look, there's an opportunity for us as conservatives to do the things we believe in and to make people's lives better. And I think that's what I said about the speech last night, putting people first. If you just have that mentality every day when you go to work, things will work out.
Governor, as a veteran yourself, how important is it to you to see Chairman Griffith's bill on veteran suicide prevention finally make it across the finish line?
No, we're anything I can do to help veterans. My heart and soul goes out to them. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair today if I hadn't served my country. That's just how important it made in my life at 19 years old and what I believe in. But anything we can help a very small number of people in our nation that served our country, we should do everything we can to help them. Because I'm telling you, they put everything on the line for us. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to help them, whatever means that takes.
Governor Parson, after such a prominent position in leadership and the struggles that go with it, the sleepless nights, the tension, it had to be an emotional time for you delivering that address yesterday. Did you have to fight back some emotions, or was it just full steam ahead and get the address done?
Well, my family was kind of kidding me about that last night, that they thought I was going to lose it a couple of times. And I said, by all means, I wasn't going to shed a tear. But the reality of it was very emotional for me, because I just know how hard people worked to help me get to where we are today, and how humbled I am to sit in this position for a small period of time in our history. to be able to do the things we did. But I'm just telling you, there is no way you do this job by yourself. If you ever think you're going to come in here and be the governor and you got all the answers, you're kidding yourself. The first thing you got to do, as you do in your family life, in a normal life, you got to be a good listener. Period. You've got to be a good listener, and then you surround yourself with the best people you possibly can put around you, and you try to move forward with what you believe in, and don't get distracted by all the political whims of the moment.
You know, I remind you, Governor, I was thinking about, you were talking about the not quitting and things like that. One of the last places when you were Lieutenant Governor that you visited, and it happened pretty much right after that, was you were at the Boone County 911 Center, and I spoke to you up there that day. I think it was a day later you became governor, and you just had a lot of uncertainty. Nobody knew what was going to go on. No one knew what was going to happen, and yet that next day, I believe it was the day after that, you became governor. It happened that quick. But you referenced that several times yesterday. You referenced taking over in that difficult time.
Yeah, well, that's a story within itself. I got to say one thing. When you talked to me when I was lieutenant governor,
yes,
we were always looking for media to talk to. Nobody wanted to talk to us back then. So
that was me.
Now when you become governor, everybody wants to talk to you a little bit.
That's right.
But the truth of it is, it was just such a reality moment when you get that call and they do tell you, we're coming to get you, we're coming to pick you up, you're going to be the governor of the state, and it just happens that quick. And, life's experience help you for that moment. What you've been through, all the things you've done in your life help you for that moment. But nothing will ever prepare you to be governor until you've done this job for a while and understand what it's about. And it's probably one of the most difficult jobs that I've ever had in my life, to say the least. I mean, I'm honored to be able to do it, humbled, but I tell you what, if you think you can come in here and not spend very much time being governor of the state of Missouri, you're kidding yourself. It's very demanding. It's very difficult. The schedule is giving up your family life. It's just going to happen no matter what. And there's a crisis almost around every corner. I mean, there's not a weekend goes by, not a day goes by that you don't probably talking to some of your staff from the office or something going on in the state that you have to be aware of. But look, it is what it is. It's a job. I've never been afraid to work hard. But if you're going to be the governor of this state, whoever the next governor is going to be, you better understand you're going to work hard. You're not going to be able to halfway do a job.
In terms of that hard work, I again want to personally thank you for your leadership during the COVID crisis. I was leading and practicing at a small rural hospital in Northeast Missouri, and I remember being on those calls in the early days when you and your team and all of us were trying to work together to figure it out. And I think your leadership was exemplary among all of the governors in these 50 states. And I trust that that's the kind of commitment that you gave to every crisis. And I want to personally thank you on behalf of the healthcare community and the patients that we served. What hat are you going to be wearing after your tenure? Are you going to be going down, getting your hands dirty in the soil and repairing tractors back on the farm? Are we going to see you in a public realm?
Hey, I'm going to have a little dirt on my boots is what I'm going to have. You know what? I'm going to catch up. I'm going to spend some time with grandkids, family, kind of sit back and enjoy things a little bit. I really am. I'm very comfortable where I'm at right now. Man, I've been so blessed to live the life I've lived, and I just want to go back and enjoy it. And I don't know what I'll do afterwards. I'm not good. I don't want to be in
the world. Yeah. So some more doomsday news for you. On an individual level, Fox is reporting that most Americans cannot afford a $1,000 emergency expense. So while the economy is pretty hot, it grew last year, I think, by more than 3%. We've seen spending numbers and heard from our friends, for example, at the NFIB and other factors that people are still spending, but apparently they're not saving anything. And that's tough. And it was crazy because my washer and dryer bit the dust a couple weekends ago, and to be in a place where it's not the end of the world, but I do remember as a young professional, and I think a lot of people are in that situation where I remember my refrigerator bit the dust, and I was I was like, how do I afford a new refrigerator? And thank goodness, you can get like a 0% loan at a time. But there are a lot of folks, who are now mid-career who are saying, yeah, if I have a $1,000 emergency, car trouble, medical expenses, I'm in a tough spot. So not good news on that front. And then also we've got the National Debt Tracker. And so I mentioned my doomsday analysis is certainly related to the volcano situation, but I forgot that the other doomsday scenario I see is the national debt, and the pressure that it puts on us and internationally, I think is terrifying. But these numbers are insane. Yesterday, the debt number jumped to $34 trillion, and I'm not going to read the full number for you, as of Tuesday afternoon, and that is up $32 billion from the previous day.
Yeah.
From the previous day.
I avoid looking at that clock watch the Governor Parson interview that last segment, make sure that you check it out on our podcast, which will be available later today, right, Hannah? Okay.
Yep.
And because of that, and I'd recommend that you take a listen to yesterday's 7 o'clock hour, if nothing else, in addition to with Caleb Rowden, and that was an important time as well.
It certainly was. And it's fun to reflect back on Governor Parson's journey.
Yep.
I mean, he was the lieutenant governor. He's never really said that, but I didn't expect him to ever run for governor. So he could have, served out the LG race with no disrespect to that office, but there's not a lot going on there. And then ridden off into the sunset, gone and retired on his farm. And that would have been the end of his political career. So for him to go from that to where he is today. And one thing, that we didn't even get to was all of his appointments, not only to the judiciary, right? He's had a lot of Supreme Court appointments, but certainly statewide, officials. So his impact on the state, be it through other individuals or the courts, is massive. And I think, he's going to be one of the most, if not the most impactful governors in our lifetime.
If you look at the turmoil that surrounded that time when he came in with the Greitens issue and so forth.
Oh, man.
A stabilizing force is needed in times like that. And I think of him as a Truman-esque type of a character at that time and a personality. How about you, John?
Boy, I remember being at the Capitol and we were going, where's our governor? And Governor Parson showed up and said, literally, they came and took him off the tractor down at the farm back home, the highway patrol, and broke some speed limits, getting him back to Jefferson City so he could be sworn in as the 57th governor of the Show Me State.
And can you imagine just the highway patrol showing up at your house? I mean, obviously he was the lieutenant governor, so you know in the back of your head that could always be, I guess, a possibility. Mm-hmm. But just the highway patrol showing up and say, hey, you're governor now, we got to go.
Well, and if you recall, Greitens had basically said, I'm never backing down. Right. I'm not going away. And so even for people who were close to Governor Parson and who knew outside that it was in the realm of possibility, that day came as a shock, especially the timing of it. Mm-hmm. And so, he did give a shout out to his team. But I think, I would reiterate to the folks that, he got pulled off the tractor, but there were a lot of folks either in his office or in his circle that suddenly had to mount a transition and assume jobs that they weren't, not that they weren't prepared, but that they weren't, that was somewhat unexpected. And especially, when you're on a transition team for a governor, you win in November, you've got months to kind of transition the government. And if you recall, Eric Greitens brought in a bunch of out-of-staters to run the government. And as soon as he was out and he tanked their careers too, they were out. So not only was it transitioning the governor's office, but also finding leaders in a lot of other roles as well. It was hugely impactful to our state. So shout out to, his team did an incredible job.
It caught my attention that when I asked him about, is he willing to push some of the issues that clearly he wants, I thought he backed off of, nudging the legislature to do what everyone wants done. I find this is fascinating. Because he seems to have that leadership quality where he can gather people. He has that wonderful, affable style where it's just, man, how can you get mad at Governor Parson? I would love to have him get the various people in the room and say, hey, come on, I'm the adult in the room. Not say it, but be the adult in the room.
Well, and what do you open the show with? That with your age, there comes a lot of wisdom. Yeah. And I think maybe we're hearing that from the governor as well. That why get in the middle of it now when you don't need to? Well,
but if you really want to lead change and if you want to have and not be a lame duck, and I'm not saying that he intends to be, but wow, what an opportunity to really take the leadership and use his political capital, which is enormous, and use that to a positive effect. I would encourage him to do that. I know that my encouragement means nothing.
Yeah, and there's nothing he can do to convince Bill Eigel that, of anything.
Well, he's, governor, good, bad, or indifferent. He's a good old boy. He was a guy,
right.
Immediately out of high school, he went and joined the Army and became an MP, and then he came back and got in law enforcement. I think he was a Polk County sheriff, and he owned some gas stations, to pay the bills back in there. So, he's kind of a grassroots kind of guy.
And why that appeals to everyone at some level, right? A person who's really been in every possible role that a citizen can be in.
Well, and I think from his perspective too, and I think that's been some of the criticism in the Senate this week is like respect of the institution. And so when you're respecting the institution of the governor's office as well, you respect that the executive is a separate, you respect separation of powers and the constitutional role that the executive has separate and apart from the legislature. And so I think also what we're hearing from him is, I wish the legislature would do something, but I respect the constitutional separation of powers and they have the ability to handle their business, and I'm going to be the executive.
But let me push back on that. The governor proposes the budget.
True.
Okay, so there is a nexus there. There's a nexus there.
Yeah.
And I would expect that, if there's shared priorities, that the priorities there'd be an expectation that we're going to work towards that.
But if you want to kind of go full conspiracy theory, if I'm the governor and I want my budget priorities to, win the day, I'm not going to go step in the Senate's mess right now because maybe the retaliation is that I don't get the budget that I want.
And to his credit, he did suggest a path with IP reform. Let's have the House do something and put it in the Senate's lap. And I sense that's what's going to happen. When we talked to Cherie yesterday,
I don't know if the Senate actually called in if they went into session after the State of the State yesterday. But really, today is going to say a lot about. I will be. I don't usually tune into the online live stream, but I'm going to. I think try to do that today because we really. Today I think they're going in. I don't know what time. I'll need to look that up. But and what we heard from Senator Rowden yesterday is really it's what happens next week is going to say a lot about what happens for the rest of the year.
Well, on Caleb Rowden's feed, he basically said. He was challenged. Someone, I guess Tim Jones and he are in a little Twitter row now.
Well, Tim Jones
said something about throwing Denny Hoskins off the committee. And Caleb Rowden said, Tim can take credit for being the first person to do that. I'll take credit for being the first person to get school choice expanded in this state.
Because this is now the second time that Senator Hoskins has been removed from a committee, right?
I think that's right, and there have been more. We talk about it like it is historic, and it's historic in the way that it kind of went down. But people have been removed from committees before, and I think someone brought up, for example, I think Senator Loudon was removed many years ago when the midwifery stuff was going on, and now he was then. I think he was only removed for like a week. But
I remember solitary removals, but this was a purge. There's no other way to put it. This was a purge.
But let's be clear that there are other folks that are associated with the Freedom Caucus that were not purged.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the conversation I heard post this move yesterday was what happens to those people? What are they going to do? Are they going to save face and not stand up on the floor to try to retain their power and get their priorities passed? And if one of them steps out of line, will Senator Rowden then purge them as well? Who knows?
Interesting question. I hadn't thought that through, but maybe Caleb Rowden's making a marker here to say, look, are you with us or against us? I'm giving you a chance, Mary Elizabeth Coleman, Nick Schroer, and others, to be with an achieving efficacious majority. And,
it says a lot that the Freedom Caucus, it was only 4 people, right, that actually got removed.
Right. And what are they, 7 deep? 7 or 8 in the caucus?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, and maybe those remaining members are finding a way to do both in the sense of stand up for what the caucus is standing up for and also not be a little tyrant on the floor of the Senate and still allowing things to get done. I don't know.
This is nothing new under the sun. I can think back to, how many years ago was it? Just a couple years ago, there were some Representative Rober Lee Summit and somebody else. They got kicked out of the party caucus and went to the tiny broom closet office and had their bigger offices reassigned. So there's nothing new under the sun in this regard.
Now, John Marsh, I'm looking at a letter to Senator Caleb Rowden from the Boone County Central Committee, a Republican Central Committee that asks for his. He says that he and Senator O'Loughlin should resign immediately, that they're no longer supporting them. A similar missive has gone out from the St. Charles analogy to that committee. What's going on in Cole County with the Cole County Republicans?
Haven't heard. I think maybe weigh in with Jefferson City Mayor Ron Fitzwater, who served at the helm of that for many years, and see where their take on it is. I think it might be a little more kinder and gentler.
This is interesting. I mean, to me, this is a big stake in the ground here.
I mean, say what you want about Senator Rowden, and we heard a lot of this yesterday too. And he's such a rhino. I wish we didn't have him. Well, you know what we're going to have next session? We're going to have Stephen Weber, and you know what? He's certainly not. We're going to have a pro-abortion, and I've met him. He's a nice person. We don't agree on any of the issues. So you can say that Caleb Rowden's a rhino all day long, but the fact of the matter is, for Boone County, we had a conservative leader that we are not going to have for many years to the future. So I just, I don't buy that. Now, whether or not he should be removed from leadership, I would push back in the same way that I do with the national folks in the Freedom Caucus. Okay, who are we going to name somebody that we replace him with that everyone would vote for, and that would do something different? I mean, the Freedom Caucus removed Kevin McCarthy. They thought they were going to get something different, and we've got more of the same. I mean, I think even Senator Rowden mentioned that, if we remove, if Cindy O'Loughlin went to go back for a vote in leadership, she would get more votes today than she even got in the initial vote. And the fact, and so take that anger. If you're angry about leadership or whatever, the key to that is not to remove, it's to elect more people that agree with you. And so the fact of the matter is, the people have elected their representatives, and the majority of the people are not on the side of the Freedom Caucus. So, either elect the people that are, or sit down.
I have no problem with people who are both feet squarely planted in the Freedom Caucus's strategy.
Issues.
I have a problem with their tactics because
Correct.
their tactics have not been effective.
And I'll agree on a lot of the issues. I'm
We all
firmly
agree.
in their camp. Yeah.
So I would urge maybe, maybe we should be critical and proportionally parse out that criticism where it's deserved.
But
and
ask them, but go and do your research on their priorities. I mean, that's my point. Is they're like, they want initiative petition reform. They're pro-life. They want this. Go look at what they pushed last year. Look at what they passed. I mean, one of the Freedom Caucus's members got a bill passed. Their number one priority. It was super early. You know what it was? Film tax credits. Tell me how that is a conservative issue. Tell me.
Right.
What's the other issue? You say your rule of law and you care about money. Well, it's these people who are allowing these illegal machines in every gas station in the corner. So go look at their record and then explain to me how they're more conservative than other people.
And we just got done talking with the governor, and they did pass during his tenure some major tax relief.
Certainly.
Okay, and the gas tax, by the way, you don't have to pay that if you don't want to. File for a rebate.
I'm going to roll my eyes at you.
No, I mean, think about it.
I'm not spending 27 hours collecting all the paper.
Well, that's your problem. It's there.
$2 back.
But
no.
it's there, okay? But
And DOR or Department of Revenue employees appreciate you, Stephanie.
And the point is, we do have to pay for roads and infrastructure and bridges, okay? And so,
but you bring up a good point. I mean, that rollback and all that is due to the Hancock Amendment, and we didn't mention that yesterday. But when we were talking about initiative petition reform, I was trying to recall what were we passing when Republicans were not in
Yeah.
Last week, if you recall, maybe you don't remember, but we were talking about, and I don't know if we talked about it on air. Yes, we did. Hannah had this stuff that looked like liquid nails that she called oatmeal.
No, they're called Proats, like Proats.
I mean, John, with a putty knife, you couldn't have managed this stuff in the cup.
It was pretty bad.
And so if that's your version of the kind of food you bring, Hannah, don't worry about me eating any of your food. I'm not touching it.
I was upset that day because my oats didn't turn out as good as I wanted them to, and I had meal prepped 2 more days of it. They're still actually sitting in my refrigerator.
I don't think goats would eat those oats. I'm sorry, those were.
They were thick with a couple C's.
One of the leftovers I want to leave you with, ladies and gentlemen, is there was a story on our Chiron and the Fox News feed here in the studio about maybe banning. Some jurisdiction states are talking about banning social media from kids at some level, and I don't think that. But what happened to me this morning, you remember I was a little disoriented at the top of the program. I was struggling. I didn't, I was using the wrong colloquialisms. I had left my phone at home.
Uh-oh.
Withdrawal.
It created anxiety. I realize that now. But one other thing happened as the shows rolled along. Have you noticed things have become more coherent, more cogent, more on task? I've hit the marks better. Being without your technology can work out well. We should probably have planned tech breaks.
I'm
now,
feeling triggered.
You're not going to like that, are you?
I know. I cannot.